My name is Bulelani Balabala. Today I'm going to be talking to you about redefining access, building trust and financing South Africa's township economy. But I think I can't really necessarily kick off my talk without asking a singular question. What does access mean to you? Because I think every individual who heard that question and that question landed at the back of your mind, each and every individual has got a different answer about what access actually means to them. That then becomes important because the backdrop of that answer puts you in an empathetic position to understand the individuals that you are seeking to talk to, that you're seeking to engage with. But it would be a fluke for me not to share about the next couple of slides. I think it's about 13 or 14 slides with you, some information, insights, and data without sharing a little bit about my story. So my journey started in my mother's garage. My landlord at the time, I think at the time my age was 15, so I've been an entrepreneur for the past 21 years. 2 years of them being informal means the business not registered. 19 of those years, I'm running this makeshift business. I'm growing it. I'm scaling it. At some point, we're servicing the first rand nationwide, and we really have been able to grow an impactful business. But before we get into the impact side, I'm starting this business, like I said, in my mother's garage. I'm trying to convince her to sublet with the boxes, the pans, the dust. It's a single garage at in the middle of Tembisa. She eventually begrudgingly nudges me yes and says that we'll give you the space for you to then operate and run. At that particular moment in time, my highest academic grade was grade 9 and no grade above that. Pulled out of academia because my mother was being rechanged. So the logical thinking was, let us take you to an FET college because the minimum entrance to an FET college is a grade 9, so that by the time my money runs out, at least you've got some sort of a trade and you've got a better shot out of life. There I was strutting through, did my NCOR, did my N1, N2, then the money eventually then ran dry, then decided I'm going to fail forward, and my idea of failing forward was going to start this business. At the time when I decided to start this business was an internet cafe. We opened up our doors on the 3rd of September 2006. So I'm the type of individual who doesn't assimilate their growth and their success to being singularly on myself, but it's a community growth. Because I sort of learned that in the communities that I am, and I think we hear a lot of these sayings, right? It takes a community to raise a child. It takes a community to actually grow a business, because one individual, when you pay homage to them and really understand them and see them and understand what they view access as, they'll be able to unlock doors for you and opportunities for you so that you're able to grow and scale your business. Grew this business from an internet cafe selling. So I think my methodology was different. So for the first 3 months of the year, I'm selling stationery. On the last 7 days of the month into the first 2 days of any new month, I'm selling enterprise polony and cheese packs to my local community. Then eventually we muster up the courage and the funds to raise 1,500 rand to get a taxi association license back then in those days. And then I collaborate with a friend of mine who's got a VW Kombi. I wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I transport these school kids. Then I open up my internet cafe. And I think the assimilation of this internet cafe I think the story is no different from any South African entrepreneur story. There is no funding, but you don't allow that to stand in your way. You operate outside the guise of those limitations so that you're able to then position yourself. To date, we've grown one of South Africa's largest networks of township entrepreneurs, providing access to mentorship, and really just scaling out as the leading township entrepreneurial platform. But I think apart from that introduction, I want to get back into my slide and share some insights with you. This is my initial business and where I started from in Tembisa. But it all could not have necessarily started here. But I think an important precursor that I want to throw into this part, where I'm talking about is to manage the sense and the rands will follow, is that, before the digital systems, township entrepreneurs already developed their own banking ideologies and banking logic, because the system at the time, was built in the absence of them, which is why at some point you hear a lot of conversations around you need to formalize. I think my particular vantage point to that drive is to say that I think I've always said to big business, they need to formalize themselves to the township economy, because the moment you understand that, you actually understand the fact that it operates as a very rigid market. I'll make you an example. I get brought in about 7 years ago by, I think, the biggest SME bank in the country to work on them with the SME products that's primarily supposed to focus on micro enterprise enterprises based in the township. And I think they give us a pile of applications for that particular fund at that particular moment in time. But when they give us those applications, what we also then request from them is the fact that they give us applications of the ones that they have rejected. So this pile now piles up to about 2,000 applications. The team goes through these applications, and we find something particularly interesting and phenomenal in these numbers, right? Because the proof is in the pudding. One of the most phenomenal things that comes up from these numbers is that from the pile of the individuals that were excluded comes up an individual who runs a 4 meter by 3 meter quarter place in Alexander called Paradise Court. I'm making up the name so I don't actually divulge the actual name. And for the benefits of the story as I tell you. But this individual is asked a series of questions, right? So now this individual, at the back of your mind, just think about it this way. He can't articulate his position, can't articulate his financial projections, can't articulate basic things like the unique selling proposition. So he's asked, tell us about your business. His one-liner, we are the best in Kota, we are number one. The second part is, what is your unique selling proposition? People stand for very long, there are long lines. But it's part of this pile that is excluded. But an interesting thing is that no one takes the time to actually look at the numbers. The numbers tell a different story. This individual is making 580,000 Rand a month on average. He's got a net profit, a gross profit of about 38%. But there's an interesting thing here in this market, in this business model. He's been able to segment his clientele into three forms. So the first three products that he sells are aimed at the township consumer that is price sensitive. The next 5 or 6 products that he sold to a next group of individual or a market, this is a nostalgic sale. This is an individual who grew up in the township, but I've now have financial mass. I can buy those products. I can pay premium for this product. So what does he then do? He then takes this product and exports them out to the other side of Alexander, which is in Sandton, for the individuals that want to consume a varied product apart from the usual burger and the salt. And then he's got the third type of client. The individual who says, I'm either a tourist or I'm a different race group and I'd like to consume this product. Can you then come and set something up for us? What has this individual now achieved in that particular moment in time? They were able to then scale their businesses while operating from that particular infrastructural limitations or a rather advantage to them at that moment in time. So what's very important for us to then see in that particular side is the fact that it's been operating very successfully. If we change how we then approach this market, then what we then open ourselves up to is to understanding one key and critical thing. One of the key things that drive the township economy is trust. It operates on trust. I mean, in the communities and townships that we've done work in, and I mean, we've done work in all 9 provinces and about 189 townships around the country, directly impacted over 100,000 township entrepreneurs nationwide, and we'll share some of those impact stats so that you get the gravity of the work that we do. One of the singular things that we've understood is that when you understand what trust is as a driver, then you understand that the key thing is that trust then becomes the key economic driver within the space. So what is trust then? Trust then becomes in the currency. Meaning that before we talk about the numbers and what we can extract from the numbers, are we willing to take the time to actually genuinely understand how people operate? Let me share a story with you. One of the gentlemen we've had the pleasure of working with over the years used to operate and work as a sales rep, who then became one of the top sales rep for the late Dr. Richard Maponya. And he says a critical thing. He says that one of the key things that set us up as one of the leading dealers at the time in the country in terms of sales is that we started to employ a couple of key things. Number one, we understood that the individuals who needed these bikes had no documentation and they would not pass any financial scrutiny or financial checks. So what we then started to do is to walk them through a journey. So Abab Gumet or Abab Dlamini would come into my store looking for a bucket because he sold chickens, and his frustration is that I have the money, but I'm told that I can't afford purely because of the system. So they walk them through the journey to say, let's walk on a 4 or 5 month journey where you come in every single Friday and we do 2 things. We capture down on an Excel spreadsheet and a ledger what your transactions are, and then we seek to do the second thing. I will drive you with my company car and take you to the bank so that we go and deposit your money so that now you recognize. They did that, and the moment they started to do that, guess what? At the end of the 4-month period, they now started to get a sale. But they didn't just get a sale, they got an ambassador who went all over the town tooting about who they are, and that became their system and modus operandi. These 2 stories operate in a conjoined manner. The one that I shared before with the gentleman who runs that got the 4 meter by 3 meter zinc container quarter business in Alexander, and this individual right here. Why? It's intentionality. If you want to participate in this market, then we need to be intentional about how we show up and how we plug in and say one singular thing to ourselves. The way in which we operate is informal to the ones that are operating formally. What that then does, it gives you the capacity, the room and the space to understand the market better and also to operate within that market. So some of the key things that we do is research. But some of the research data points that I find primarily interesting is that we hear this number being thrown around everywhere at the top block, talking about the township economy being valued at 900 billion. I personally have always felt and thought that that was a conservative number, even though we don't have the research capacity to go a little bit deeper. And on the sides of that slide are some of the breakdowns of the size, the estimated size and values of the industries. I mean, you're talking about the spaza retailers there, you're talking about the kasi food outlets, the alcohol outlets, the shop rentals there, the backroom market, which is worth about 30 billion. Then you talk about the Stockville market, which is worth about 60 billion. But there's an interesting block at the bottom, which is a study that was done the previous year that was released in 2024 by FinScope SME 2024 survey, which actually quadruples that number because they take a deep dive and they say Fulge ages onto the floor and they give a singular idea to say that in actual fact, our estimated view is that the township economy is worth about 3.1 to about 5 trillion from the MSME report. But also over and above that, in terms of participants within that market, is over 3.2 million of these individuals that are participating within the space, which then singularly says, because I'm talking to numbers, people who are within this room, and all of this data, by the way, is available. You can actually go by the FinScope report. I'd love to share it with you, but I paid a lot of money for it, and the one on top as well, or you could get us in to come talk. But all this data is available for you, and you must remember that the foundation of it is intentionality. What does this then say to us? This says to us that the market is open and the market is available to participate. I think all of us are aware of some of the retailers that have gone to the township wanting to set up shop and to build up spaces in the township, but have left with their tail in between their legs because you're not operating from a place of intentionality. What we then sought to do, I think in my own personal entrepreneurial journey, is that we built a platform about 10 years ago, being inspired by my own entrepreneurial journey. So now I've built this business. It went from an internet cafe to a printing shop, from a printing shop into a branding, from branding to manufacturing. So we're manufacturing now aluminium substrates and composites from the printing industry. Then now we sell it about 3.5 years ago. But out of that, we then now birthed this agency, which is Township Entrepreneurs Agency, for a singular purpose, to support and develop township entrepreneurs across the country. What we then have picked up from that, in having worked with over 100,000 township entrepreneurs who directly contribute to about 340,000 jobs directly with those individuals, and we've been able to raise insourcing internally about 9.8 million in providing seed capital as low as 50,000 rand to as high as about 200,000 rand to these individuals, is that they're able to then grow year on year. And I'll share some of these two key individuals so that you get to actually humanize these individuals by being able to open up and de-risk how you look at this market and how you actually participate in this market. So the first young man I'd like to share with you here is a young man who then has grown up, who grew up in the Sebokeng area in Gauteng. They had a plot out in Sebokeng where they used to farm out cabbages, and his job was primarily to sell cabbages, and out of that grew the deep desire to go into agro-processing. So what do they do? So about 3 years ago, we were able to then work with them through an enterprise development program that we were running, provided them some seed capital for machinery and equipment, and today they are listed in major retailers in the country manufacturing sunflower oil. Or you can give him a round of applause, actually, because he did that. What I always share with individuals is that we don't own these entrepreneur stories. It's all them. We are the 1% factor. Because at the end of the day, it's not a handout. It's incentivizing the individuals in the right manner who are dedicated, who are showing up, who are dedicated to actually growing and scaling their businesses. The second individual I'd like to share on stage is an amazing lady who used to work as a metro police officer. At the height of COVID, found herself without a job, and in a garage in Pretoria, in Olivenhout Bosch, a township that is out in Pretoria, started mixing out detergents. But what she then picked up is that some of the detergents, some of your detergents that you are buying from the shop has got harsh chemicals that hurt your skin and harm your skin. So what she then started to do is that she took a plant extract all the way from Toyando, which is a hometown, and started to infuse it in the development of this particular product. So a business that started out in a garage out in Olivenhout Bosch 3 years later is listed in all macros, in all ShopRites, in all Pick n Pays. You can literally go across the road and buy that product today. day. And all of these individuals are simple because you go to the first one, Noso Sunflower Oil, you Google them up, you call them up for a meeting, you hear the story yourself. The second individual is Toss Detergents, that you can Google up, talk to these individuals and hear the story yourself. Why do I bring up these slides? Because of this critical point at the bottom of the slide. These are the types of entrepreneurs your credit empowers when we are operating in an intentional manner and are able to sift out the rot from the ones who are actually serious, the ones who are scammers, to the ones who actually have the agility and the hunger for growth. And this group of individuals I find to be very tenacious and very hungry. I mean, I call them the individual who drive possibilities in the spaces that they're in. So they don't necessarily run any businesses whatsoever within our network. Within our network, they contribute to about 24% of the individuals that we work with who operate within our network. These usually are sole proprietors and are running their businesses as a side hustle. So the one gentleman I point to on the far right, I think your left, who's wearing the glasses, goes by the name of Tupac. So Tupac used to work as a security guard. Yeah, Tupac. I think you wanted to say Tupac, but he realized I'm South African version. But Tupac used to operate, or rather had a job as a security guard, got retrenched at the heart of COVID, and left with a frustrating situation because he was a father to a young girl and wanted to be a very present and committed dad. Got advice from an older gentleman in his community that says, why don't you watch people's dustbins? You debated it a little bit because there's an ego thing about watching people's bin, but also there's a dignity thing for him where he thought, money goes to certain places as opposed to certain places, but money goes to where problems are being solved. So Tupac started to wash bins. And out of that, he understood some singular metrics. Majority of households in townships are headed by women. Majority of them being older women. So there's a trust deficit in allowing a stranger to come into your home. So what does he now do? He now services 80 of those homes in and around his community and does a singular thing, washes 80 bins every single Thursday, makes himself 16,000 Rand a month from his former 4,500 Rand job as a security guard. It's shifting how we see the market, it's shifting how we see the individuals. Because when you look at their businesses, they look like nothing like some of our businesses. They don't have a PABX system like we do. They don't have a biometric system like we do. They don't have branded email addresses. They probably use a Gmail. Sometimes they don't even utilize a Gmail account. Then I go to this next gentleman that is here with the horses. So this gentleman over there is Lucky. His business partner's got the knee on top. I've cut his head a little bit because for the presentation's sake. But Lucky operates with his business partner. They operate out of the township and they do a singular thing. So they've got these 2 donkeys and a cart. They deliver charcoal in the morning when the market is not ripe for charcoal. They pick up rubble. One of the biggest frustrations that they picked up is the fact that in the community that they're in Orange Farm, still to this day, there are no tarred roads and there's a part of Orange Farm that still has not had electricity, even for the past 14 or 16 years. That's the reality within the community and in Gauteng. It's a very strange phenomenon when you think about it. But he does a couple of things. So they utilize WhatsApp pinned location to get to where the consumers are. Because one of the things that we engaged them on when we started to work with them is that the reason why there's a big failure drop-off is because it's not that the information is not relevant to the individual, it's that it's not created in a way that is palatable to them. There are 2 singular things that we always need to consistently think about when we're developing products for this particular market, for micro enterprises, formal and informal businesses. How does it make me money? How does it save me money? When the problem speaks of big jargon and doesn't necessarily speak to that, or the problem utilizes any language that doesn't answer those singular things, you're going to have immediate sign-ups and immediate drop-offs. Why? Because there is no opportunity cost and benefit that drives me towards the long end. Why? Because every single month I'm trying to solve towards month end. How am I going to pay the bills? My last 2 slides really just talk to this. Disrupt. The township economy has always been disruptive. It's time for the credit systems or for individuals who are within the credit system to disrupt themselves or even to catch up to how these individuals operate so that we don't necessarily shove a system down, but we find ways of building a system that acts as a bridge. I'll make you an example. We worked with one corporate, and this one corporate's job at the time was to support suppliers, but they already have a pool of suppliers that already been spending millions on for a number of years, but they wanted to adopt new suppliers, but out of the Mamelodi area in Pretoria. But there's a couple of key things in the matrix that we developed, is that our matrix and their matrix was a bit of a clash. So what did we then start to do? We then started to then engage the community through our community outreach programs to ask them a couple of key things. Who are the individuals who are trusted in the key sectors? Furniture manufacturing, food, agro-processing, and the sort. We allowed the community to guide us to these individuals. The second tier thing that we sought to do when sitting with these individuals is ask them to also to do an audit. What documentation and compliance documentation do you not have in place? The moment we then started to understand that, then we moved to the next thing, and the next thing was to build a credible bridge between these individuals and that funder, where they actually got provisionary approvals to do work and they got the compliance documentation later. Guess what? Because of that incentive that incentivized people who have operated outside the guise of the formal stream, now being introduced to the formal stream through compliance, they now have become long-term suppliers of these organizations, have created employment for a number of individuals. My last slide is there's a taxi, and I think lessons from a taxi is very debatable, right? Because you might have been cut over driving here by a taxi, but oftentimes the taxi industry is ordinarily considered the most not abrupt, the most informal, but I seek to tell you that they're actually the most formal in how they operate, and their drivers are very dedicated in how they operate. Their driving quality and their ethic might be debatable, but they'll get you there because they're customer fixated. But most importantly, they're fixated on making sure that they're back in time to be able to then hit their targets and their numbers, because they know their numbers very, very well. So I put the slide up to then single out that line at the bottom which says, trust and structure can exist outside formal structures. Imagine if formal credit amplified that power. This whole entire presentation was to highlight one singular thing: changing how we see, opening ourselves up to the market so that we understand the market much deeper. But the best way to understand the market is to taste, touch, and feel, and fully immerse yourself in the market, so that it's not a township economy, but it is a township economy, because you are part of that economy, because you're recognizing that you are informal and you are willing to formalize yourself to how the township economy works, so that we don't chase the 3.1 trillion numbers on the board, but we're actually deeply ingrained and connected to the human being. That's where you see your return on margin. My name is Bulelani Balabala. Hope that was valuable. Thank you so much.